Hello, Darren.
Hey, Richard. Good morning. How are you? Good evening. Good morning. Whatever.
Yeah, we were
Whatever.
filming this in the morning time, but
Yes.
airing it at night. Cool. So we are here to have just a conversation about improv and community and what you've sort of built with Held Together and the community that has developed because of that. Before we get into all of that, for anybody who maybe watching this who doesn't know Held Together, or anybody who doesn't know you, the history of you, why don't you give us a little recap of the life of Darren leading up to Held Together?
The background of me is I went to acting school in New York University, and did a lot of theater there for a while. That eventually got me into Los Angeles to give the film industry a shot. So I moved out to LA in '95. I went to get an agent and was fortunate enough to get one. And she said right away, get into improv classes. She said they're really, really good directors like you when you have improv experience because you're flexible and you can audition differently and it really helps your performance. And I was always geared towards comedy anyway. Everyone kind of always said I was this over the top goofball. So I was like, great, this sounds awesome. I fell into classes at the Groundlings in LA and I was just hooked from day one. I just couldn't believe how awesome it was. So I stayed in improv classes nonstop since then. I had a partner who lived in Orange County and I was living in LA. I just couldn't handle the commute, taking classes in LA, doing auditions, and I was living in Orange County with him. So basically, we compromised on Long Beach, and that's how I discovered Long Beach. And I realized it was such an incredibly special place. What I realized also was it was a very different community than LA, with really diverse, really down to earth, everyday people. And I chose to want to share this improv craft with the people in my community. So it all started with a little class at the Parks and Rec department. I was working for a nonprofit called Partners of Parks that did things for Long Beach parks, and that's when I first saw the catalog and said, "Oh, maybe I could do this for fun. I'll teach an improv class," and that was around 2008, 2009. And that's pretty much how I got started in improv and sharing it with the Long Beach community. And I never expected it to blossom into what it's turned into now, which is, 10, 11 years later, and a whole big talented group of improvisers and people that have bonded through this awesome craft.
I know whenever I do theater, whenever there's a play, it's always like, oh, we are a family, and we are this thing together, and it's true. But very often the play ends, and then eventually that tight knit group finds other tight knit groups to be a part of. With improv, it seems, especially with Held Together, it seems like that's, though people come and go, it seems more or less it is this sort of solid community. I wonder, did you have that type of experience, like when you took classes in LA, like as far as like meeting people that ended with like, wow, we are solid friends, like through and through to this day?
I would say no. I think because it's such a competitive market. Most people, if you're in LA or if you're in New York, you're there for a reason, and it's usually creative and career oriented. So I met some great people and made some great friends, but you didn't have that sense of community. I think that happens a lot in LA. Is there's a little bit of a sense of isolation because people have their own individual goals and determinations,
Mm.
and these are things they're doing. So also, when I went to Groundlings, it was it's a pass fail program.
Mm.
And every session, every class you take, there's a chance that you will not be invited to take classes again. So there's a little level of stress on people too,
Yeah.
to do well. And I think that, while we were having a blast, it didn't lead to long-term community things because people were moving in a different direction. Um, what's so great about Long Beach is most people are doing this for self-enrichment, for fun. And yes, there's definitely some creative goals as well. But we are goofing around playing pretend together. And it's 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 such a special bonding thing. Like you said with theater, when you're in a play and you're doing this thing together day in and day out, and then it kind of ends and you need something to bring you together again, or else it's likely not going to happen. But improv never ends.
Yeah.
You're always learning, you're always taking classes. The bond you create when you're doing this day in and day out with no labels on each other and people from all different backgrounds is really special. When I was in LA, it was a lot of actors and a lot of people in the same age group. If I was over 30 taking classes there, you could pretty much bet I was the oldest one in the class,
Yeah.
which was fine. That's a long way of saying I think the diversity in Long Beach and the goals of people taking improv are a little bit different. People are taking a little bit more to play.
What was that first year of classes here in Long Beach? Like you working with like the parks department and putting together these classes. Like what was that like for you?
Oh my gosh. Those first couple of years, Richard, I was so insecure and doubted. I felt like I was getting away with something and I was going to be uncovered at any moment. Like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And I spent hours poring over every syllabus I did. Um, I really, really was nervous before every class. And then when I was in class and with the people, it was just this pure sense of joy. Honestly, I didn't really relax until a few years in, but that first year was this strange combination of, week to week, getting the confidence in myself to believe I was able to do this and watching it grow.
Mm.
That first class I had, the first class I put out there, I had to cancel.
Mm.
And because there were not enough people signed up. And then I sent a press release to the press telegram and they put a little blurb on like page 15 at the bottom of the paper and the class filled up. And then this was just a 4-week course then. What had happened was the recession. Yay. So I decided to start teaching classes during the recession. So I knew I had to keep them really affordable. So I kept it simple and short, 4-week class. And people loved it. And they just kept taking it month after month after month. So about 6 months in, I realized we needed another level. So I created a level 2 class. And that kept growing and that kept growing. It was exciting. And I still kept challenging myself too to create new things like, oh my gosh, now I'm teaching advanced people. At that same time, I got laid off from the nonprofit I was working at. I thought, man, I really love this thing. I'm unemployed now. Maybe this is my opportunity to give it a go. So that first year was, it was just a constant battle of having the courage to believe I could do these things combined with the joy of doing it.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I can definitely relate. I know every class that I teach, like that imposter syndrome comes up of like they're gonna find out. They're gonna wish Darren was teaching or Kendra was teaching or someone else.
And why does that happen? I don't know. Now I look back and I realize, of course, I had the skills. Like, of course, I knew what I was talking about. But I think, you've been a teacher in other realms too. I think teaching is its own special skill set.
Yes.
And when I realized that I'm a pretty good teacher, I thought, aha, there's a lot of people that might know about improvisation and what it is, but being a good teacher is really, really important because people are learning, people have different ways of learning and really taking people where they are. Now you teach the beginning classes, and I think those are the toughest because you really are getting people from different backgrounds that learn differently, and learning to be warm and accepting and teach them where they are is really important, and it's just so rewarding.
My mentors in teaching were Kendra and you. You two are such great examples of positivity and warmth with the students, while at the same time giving them direction to strengthen their skills. The first day of class was my most nervous. Like, they're gonna hate me. Like, what they're gonna be like? What did I sign up for? Who's this guy? What is he qualified to teach? And now first day of class is my favorite, because it's like, all right, cool. I get to introduce this thing that I love to people that hopefully will fall in love with it also.
People are being really vulnerable signing up for an improv class. I mean, you're just so victorious just for being there. And if you're looking scared or your energy is low, boom, it's going to like follow suit around you. So, manifesting that was so, so important. I know that there's that game, Spotlight, we play with this. It's like you make up, or you don't make up, but you're singing with full commitment.
Yeah.
I just remember being with a new class, introducing that to them for the first time, and seeing the look of terror in their eyes, and going, don't get scared yourself.
Yeah.
Or you're going to see it. Like, you got to have the best time right now. And eventually they had a good time too. And I would say, that's probably human nature, right? Whenever you're trying something new.
And especially too, we're not in a society that rewards self-confidence. To be confident in what you're doing can often be looked at as you're conceited or you're arrogant. For you to say, I can do this, I can create this school, that's an act of self-confidence, that is really, really inspirational, really, because it's I can do this. I can put my name on this thing and watch it thrive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big planner and goal-oriented person, but this took on a life of its own that I never expected it to grow into this. It's just been, starting with one class into two, into a troop, into a school and a community. It's really incredible. And now I'm just stunned myself.
I'm curious, at what point did it sort of shift from improv class with the Long Beach Parks Department to Held Together?
Good question. So, I mentioned that we had a level 2 class. Eventually, about a year later, man, these people need to perform. They're getting so good. I feel like that's a natural next step. Also, more things were developing, and then we're like looking towards a level 3 class. So, like I said, I was laid off, and I'm like, okay, this probably needs to be something. I'm going to go for it, make it my business and use Obama's unemployment benefits to my advantage, and live really cheaply for now. Thank you, Obama, for extending those during the recession. So I started looking around for different things to call it. I was like, Improv Monkey, taken. Improv this, taken, on all the websites. And I was with a student, I think that's when things started to really solidify too, is I made such deep friendships with the people that I was teaching and who were there day in and day out, and had kind of come together to form this troupe. And I was telling him what I was just telling you now. I'm like, man, I don't know what to call this. And he said, well, why don't you have such a cool last name, Held? Why don't you just use your last name, like Held Together? And I went, I'm stealing that right now. I hope that's okay. So thank you, Sean. That was Sean who gave me that. And it wasn't like this official thing, like, boom, I'm calling this a company now. It was like, I need a website, and we need to call ourselves something for when we perform, when we debut this troupe. So that's, needing those things kind of created a company. And as we started to expand, I needed more space.
Mm.
and the Parks and Rec department didn't have it. So that's when I started contacting other places to see if I could rent some space to fill the classes need. And that's when, I really started to see that this could be beyond the Parks and Rec department, and kind of wanting to shift it over to being in one place and having a theater of our own.
After that first year, or around after that first year, is when the first performance happened, right, with the troupe at Hot Java. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there was this group of about 8 or 9 folks that had taken class after class after class, and I finally brought it up to them. Well, I had seen at Hot Java, I saw that they had a stand-up night, and so I thought that's cool. They seem to be open to this, and when I talked to the owner, Ken, about it, he says, "Yeah, we'll give it a one-time shot." And so I talked to the folks, and they all had the same reaction. They're like, terror and yes, let's do it. So we practiced our butts off and invited everybody and made flyers and packed the house. And it was a free community event, and it was so special. And it had that kind of theater moment that we're talking about, that bonding thing. Like afterwards with the cast party, I mean, we went to one of the players' houses afterwards and celebrated, and you could tell it was the beginning of something special.
Yeah. Yeah.
God, cut out the crying.
Well, I mean, it definitely was, because 10 years later, in February of this year, 2020, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of that. So 10 years of month after month, that's huge, And I love that, Ken said, oh, yeah, let's try this out for once. And then did it become monthly right away?
I believe it did. I think Ken said, "Okay, I want to do this again," because the house was packed.
Yeah.
And he was selling a lot of coffee and treats.
Yeah.
And I never thought it would become our staple community event,
Yeah.
But I think that's part of what's made Held Together a special community, is people knew they could come on that fourth Saturday of the month and laugh. We actually ended up having 2 regular gigs. One was First Fridays in Bixby Knolls, and one was Fourth Saturdays there. So it kind of, once it got rolling, it happened pretty quickly.
As the school grew, so did the community. And, you mentioned earlier about how, it was one of the students who came up with the name of Held Together, and the friendships that were developing during this time seemed like they really had an impact on how the company grew, and then in turn how the community grew.
Definitely felt this balance between being a teacher and an instructor and a mentor, and really just wanting to be one of the gang and be friends. And I think we've talked about this a lot, how much easier it is to have a group of friends when you're younger, when you're in college, and you have more time to just hang out. Maybe you don't have families or work pressures and stuff yet, and as you get older, it's people are more set in their ways, and it's a little more challenging to make close friends. So my heart was just bursting, having this kind of like renaissance of friendships I hadn't had since college, and feeling so bonded and so special. And it really naturally fed into just the love and building a stronger community, because we were so happy, and other people came in and wanted to share in that happiness, and then they would share with others, and it kind of, blossomed through that. So I'm really I'm happy that came out from the beginning. It was definitely an intention of mine. I talked about how nervous I was starting out in that first class, and the thing that got me through was taking the attention off of me, and I was thinking like, okay, think about them, think about them. And I'm like, well, you know what? That's not 100% genuine either. Like, I want to do a good job. I
Yeah.
can't just forget myself. So what I would do was kind of meditate on us all being in rhythm together.
Mm.
And that was some advice I got from, I practiced Buddhism, and this was a Buddhist mentor. I called her the first day of my class, and I was so nervous. She goes, why don't you, chant that you're all in rhythm together? And I've been doing that before every class since. And it really, it works. It leaves you open and flexible to interpretation on what that means.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's what the community is like. We're so different in age and history and gender and race, but we're all in rhythm together.
That's really beautiful because being in rhythm together doesn't mean everyone's at the same level and at the same, it's we are moving with through this together. We're held together by the rhythm. I know my experience in teaching classes has been when because you feel when a class is gelling, and you feel it when it's not, and sometimes it doesn't, sometimes. And that is not a bad class, it just means that for whatever reason this group isn't necessarily bonded with each other.
Right.
And that's human, that's human. But
Learning to be okay with that was something that took some time for me, because it's me.
yeah.
I'm doing something wrong. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I had the same thing. Like they're not laughing. The last
Yeah.
group laughed when I said this, and they didn't laugh, and that means that they're not having a good time, and Darren's gonna fire me, and all of these things. But you feel it. You feel it when the rhythm is there, and really, I mean, if I looked back at like each individual class that I've taught, and if I had marked down, oh yeah, this class is in rhythm together, this class or whatever isn't, the ones that are the ones who I see those friendships still thriving today. You know,
Mm.
one thing that I really wanted when you asked me to step into a teaching role, one thing that I hoped for, because I had developed friendships with people within the community and the troop mates and stuff, but I hadn't really gone like 100% all in with like the vulnerability of like, hey, do you want to hang out? Like that's the hardest question for me. Like, do you want to hang out sometime?
That's
But
so cute.
yeah, no, yeah. So my hope when going into teaching, because I would see, I would see you and the other teachers make friends with their students in ways that I was like, oh, cool. Now that I'm a teacher, I'm going to be friends with people. And I think that first year, like it was friendly, but I wasn't making friendships. And I was like, oh, like why is that not happening? And then I realized, oh, because you have to like ask people to hang out. you know and then slowly that happened. But one thing that I know I've experienced, and I know on a much larger scale you've had to experience, is in addition to making these really awesome friendships, like great, these students are I have a great friendship with them. There's also watching friendships develop outside of you, right? Where like one of my favorite things is after class seeing two people or three people like go off together and like, hear them make plans to hang out, or see it on Facebook like, oh look, they're hanging out. Now, yes, there's a little bit of like, oh, I wasn't invited. Uh but I also let go of that, and then like I don't need to be in everything. But I'm just curious for you what that experience was like to watch,
Oh,
to see that develop outside of you.
that is my favorite part of all of it, is when seeing that like friendships have formed from it. I mean, absolutely. Having your own business is really hard, and the day-to-day teaching classes is fun, doing improv is fun, all the behind the scenes stuff, the worries, the keeping up with stuff is really challenging. And it's when you see friendships formed, when you see a community at a show, all that disappears. And I realize this is all worth it, you know. It's, you know, I keep going back to this time when Joe Comer, who then was, I think, in his 20s, and KK Wang, who's a woman in her 60s, I think, hosted a New Year's Eve party together. And I thought, what world does that happen in besides improv, where they're just like genuine friends, 40 years apart, completely different experiences in history, and it's like everybody's one. And just moments like that, yeah, are so extremely touching to me. It just to be a part of these people met through this, you know, it's neat. And it's so fun. You get to see people at their best. It's not, I feel like it's the opposite of working at the DMV or giving parking tickets, like things that people, when people are at their worst, like how wonderful is it that we get to work at a place where people are playing.
In my former life, I was a preschool teacher, and we see children just unabashedly play. Like that's what they are. You know, there's all kinds of studies on children learn through playing, and then they get into school, you know, elementary school, junior high, high school, and we get rid of playing and focus on learn, do, and then we become these adults who don't play anymore for the most part. Most adults don't play. And so I always am so just floored when I get to see people come through the doors and be willing to play. You know, like you said, we're seeing people at their best, you know, and there are some people who struggle and are like, I don't know. I was one of them, you know, in a lot of areas, but we are choosing to be there, you know, versus we have to be there.
Like any art, it's not going to be easy necessarily, but it is, you know, an art, something you're choosing to do.
Yeah.
And so even when you have, God, this is hard, or the learning it's so enriching, and you're sharing that with these people in the same room.
On that note, what have been some of the obstacles that you faced in the creation of this company and this community, and how did the community help you through those obstacles?
I feel like they help me through every obstacle all the time. Life is just hard. It's challenging. So there's the business stuff and getting through the day to day, but then, you know, you have a show, you're able to host a show and see the community together, and you just get the motivation to keep going. And like, man, I am so lucky to have this. Like, this is an outlet. If I didn't have this, I think I would dwell on some of my personal life things a lot longer. Specifically though, you know, since the pandemic started, of course, it's been really challenging, and the business is doing the best we can to stay engaged and keep going. But of course, you know, we don't have full-time classes, so we're on pause financially, and it's really hard for me to ask for things like that, to ask for money and ask for help. And there were a couple people that, you know, when this was happening in March and April, that kept reaching out and saying, how can I help? How can I help? Do you need money? Need money? And so eventually I did create a GoFundMe page, and I told those 3 people, and that was it. And one of those people put it on Facebook and reached out to other people. And by the end of the day, there were like
like several $1,000s in that account.
Yeah.
And I was just so humbled, you know, by the actions that person took and that the community took. So that was, once again, it was still hard to know that I had to ask, but it was also very uplifting, and it definitely, moments like that gave me the courage to keep going and to make the most out of this. And like improv is all about adaptability. So it's okay, what can we do? What value can we create from this? And um, that 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 gave me a spiritual boost to reconnect to that.
I talked earlier about how when we in the theater world and in other realms, we do these things and we talk about, oh, we are a family now, but then they sort of dissipate. um with Held Together, I've seen multiple times and have experienced personally that family. You and I both watch RuPaul's Drag Race, and one thing that RuPaul, that Mother Ru says is, something along the lines of, we get to choose our family. There's the family that we are born into, and we love them, and there's that. But then there's the family that you get to choose, to give your time to give your love to give your heart to. And I've seen more times than I can list when that has shown up within this community. And it just is, that's what keeps me here. I've been This is the thing that I think in my adult life, or in my whole life, this is the longest I've been with something.
Really?
Whether I mean, I was a preschool teacher for several years, but I worked at different schools, different companies.
Right.
No more than 7 years at a preschool job. Um, I would get that 7 year itch, and then, like, time to move. Um, and Yeah, and this is, like 8 years now, 8 or 9 years I've been a part of this. Um, it That's what keeps me here, is seeing, okay, not only do I get to come in and laugh and have these really beautiful, great, silly moments, but when things get hard, when things get, you know, I think too, the Hot Java show that we had, the weekend after, our troop mate Andy passed, and I think of just what that what that just what that moment was, of seeing this community come together, because we were all in grief,
Yeah.
and we all needed to be with each other, and we all needed to laugh, and we all knew that he would want us to. And and how we were all able to take support from one another, but also give support to one another, and especially to Tracy,
Yeah.
his wife, and just, it that that for me was the moment where I was like, all right, this is I knew I loved Held Together. That's when I knew this is family.
Yes. I can totally see that. That was such a powerful moment. And, for those people that don't know, Andy was one of the first troop members. He actually signed up for the very first class, the one that got canceled. um, and he passed away from cancer a few years ago. And his wife Tracy is part of the family and was in the troop. And as soon as we found out that he was sick, I mean, everybody came together to support them in any way we could. And um, when he passed, it's like everybody surrounded Tracy and said, "What can we do?" And we're helping you plan the service now, and we're doing this and we're doing that. And Tracy,
she performed that week.
Yeah.
She said, I need this. You know, she's like, this is my therapy. This is what Andy would want. And I want to. And we just wanted to be there with her too. And you were right. Everybody came out that night and really celebrated Andy too. And yeah, I just agree with you.
I think, as far as I know, that was the first time uh, the entire troupe performed at a Hot Java together. Even some alumni came back and performed.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really beautiful and really just such a snapshot of what this thing is that you've built. And personally, I know, I've spoken about this before. Earlier this year, my mom passed away, and that was a difficult time for a variety of reasons. And you talked earlier on, with the pandemic and that how hard it is to ask for help. I had that moment of like, all right, I need some help here, and I don't know how to ask. And fortunately, like part of grieving is like there's a bit of numbness that happens. So like I was able to ask because I was numb to the
We're getting all heady about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was numb to the embarrassment that I would put onto myself. And I don't know, I've shared this with a couple people, but the day after, when I had to go to the mortuary to make decisions, I reached out to the troupe, and I had some family in town, but they weren't who I needed there at that moment. And held together was, and there's a lot of I kind of think of myself as Dorothy in that moment, because I had, I think there were 4 of you who were able to come with me that day, on short notice, like, and each of you sort of had this role to play in there. Tracy was one of them who was there, and she had just lost Andy a couple of years earlier, so she knew the questions to ask and helped in asking those questions for me. Agnes was there, who was so practical and like and was like, take a picture of that, do that, and like things I normally would think, oh yeah, I should do that, but foggy head. You were there, and you part of what there were a couple of roles that you played there, but the most important to me was the levity, was that like you were able to bring moments of joy into that, and sort of yes, and like if I made like a little like, oh, here's kind of a joke, you would like, let's yes and that and make that a bigger joke, and let's laugh together.
Never let a joke lie dormant. Come on.
Yeah. And then Sarah was there, and Sarah, filled that heart role, the
Yes.
and just
It's a calming presence and so warm.
Yeah. And I just consider it like that, like I just think that I was so fortunate to have that. And I think what a mess that situation and just I would have been without that community.
I mean, I remember wanting to help so badly, and there's that feeling of, how can I help, and so you gave us the opportunity. It was just awesome. We all just like jumped on it, and I think that's what's so great about the community, is what kind of just like waiting for opportunities to connect, to help each other, to create more memories.
Yeah, because I had been on the opposite end of that, of how can I give, how can I support, and then to be on the receiving end of that was like, wow, what? Because we don't know what to do with that, or I don't know what to do with that.
Maybe that's how I felt, I think, with the GoFundMe page during the pandemic. So now it's kind of like making sense hearing your experience, like what mine was like, being on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, because it's hard. You feel like am I deserving of this? That's what it comes down to for me. It
Right.
was I don't deserve this. Well, who am I to ask people to come with me to a mortuary? Like, no one wants to do that, and I don't think anybody wanted to do that, but you did, and I think of, people within the held together community, different students, and who have had, different medical issues, different personal things that have happened over the course of, their time with us, as students, and how in our way we're able to rise up and be there, for them, as much as we can, and that's, you know yeah, one of my favorite things is to get up on stage and be silly and perform. But the fact that we get to also be there for one another in a larger way is huge.
Yeah, and it's broadened my view of what improv is capable of. Um, you know, the pandemic has really opened my eyes too on how valuable it is to mental health. Like, I really think it's right there to be prescribed with many other mental health things, therapy, meditation, um, whatever, exercise. I think this is so important. And I've had so many people tell me it's what keeps them mentally healthy. It's what keeps them going. And I think, looking forward in the future, after we've all changed so much with this pandemic, I don't know what it looks like yet, but I think that's definitely a road I want to explore, seeing how we can incorporate it as something for mental health,
Yeah.
in the future, because we've done it. I've worked with like the Mental Health Association in LA, and worked with couples therapy. I mean, that's why it's called Improv for Life. It literally works for any kind of human communication. So, um, you know, I love the art of it, and I do it mostly for fun, but yeah, after we've all gone through this, I want to see how we can really make more people uh, have have a foundation that they can go to be happier.
Yeah.
Because it's every day is a challenge for most people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm one of those people whose mental health has benefited from taking classes, from teaching classes, and yeah, I definitely see that there is a when we're on the other side of the pandemic and we're able to reopen in the way that are used to, for sure there's going to be such a need for this, because I think a lot of us, I think most of us, every one of us who are living through this, are dealing with anxiety and depression in ways. For people who already have anxiety and depression, it's sort of deepening those, and for people who don't live with those regularly, I think they are being exposed to that in a way that they maybe didn't understand before, and there's healing through laughter, through community, through being vulnerable with each other. And yeah, I can't wait to see that.
If you're in an improv class, you're always going to be on stage with someone who is listening to you,
Mm.
someone who's connecting with you. Um, and not everybody has a lot of that, you know? Some of us do, some of us have big families or lots of people. Some people really don't. And it's so, so important.
You've talked on it a little bit, but during this pandemic, held together, we haven't been able to do live shows, we haven't been able to do live classes, but the community is still thriving as much as we can given the circumstances. I just wanted to hear your take on that, on what that means to see it continue.
Oh my gosh. It's wonderful. I don't think any of us knew how the heck that was going to happen. But like, as I mentioned before, Improv is all about adaptability and creating value with what you have, what's in front of you. And you were a big part of that when this first happened and said, let's do a sketch show. I don't know if you remember, what I was like, I'm hiding under the table and going to cry for a month. Like, I was pretty wrecked, but I'm like, I'm down, Richard, just you take over. And you did, until I could get lifted again and raised by the community, like we talked about before. And God, that whole process, how we just jumped on Zoom, figured it out, got creative. And then, back to the mental health component, having those daily free check-ins, yes, where we would check in with everybody and do a little improv. Just providing that, I think, really helped keep us solidified and engaged with the community. So I am so grateful now that 6-7 months in that we are still communicating with each other all the time, that we have tons of events going on. And yes, I'm missing people in person so much, but what this has done is made me see what we're capable of. There are skill sets we have, and there's, just limitless possibilities beyond this. So when this is over, are we going to have a virtual event? Hell yeah, I think we are.
Yeah.
Are we going to have more of a TV sketch show thing? I think those things will stay. In addition to live in-person classes, so many people I've talked to have found silver linings in this thing. You have to, like one of mine is sleep. I'm rested now. I know how to cook. You got to find those things within this. Well, Held Together has found a lot of ways, to connect and create that we hadn't before too. So it's just wonderful knowing what everybody's up to, how they're doing, being able to see each other's faces. I miss the hugs, but yeah, it's great to see Held Together still creating and expanding and innovating. We talked a lot about our first year teaching and how insecure and scared we were. And that's, I think the scared thing is a good thing. It means you're challenging yourself. And I feel confident in my ability to teach now, but keep creating new classes that scare the hell out of me. Oh my God, I'm going to teach this John Hughes themed class or an acting class. But it's growth. And so I feel like it's great to feel that during this pandemic, there's actually been growth. There hasn't been, we'll put this aside for now, or there hasn't been stagnation. It feels like we're continuing to grow. And I didn't realize that until we started talking now, just how much I feel that. My instinct has always been to not get too comfortable because I'm afraid it'll all fall apart. So I don't take a lot of time to let it sink in. I've gotten way better at that over the years.
Yeah.
About, people would say, like at Hot Dog, like, look at this, look what you created. And I'm like, like I didn't create it. It's just here, whatever. Because I just don't want to get like cocky and then have everything fall apart.
Yeah. When you first approached me to about potentially joining the troupe, one of the things I remember saying to you was that one thing I love about Held Together is that there is a sense of forward momentum, that it's not, we've done, because you could have stopped at, great, we do short form improv and we are great at that, and that's what we do, the end. It's like, nope, we're gonna explore long form. Great, we're gonna bring Scott in, our musical director, your partner, and bring musical improv to it. We're gonna do sketch comedy. We're gonna do acting classes now. We're gonna, like all of these things that there is no sort of like, all right, we're good. This is it. Like improv for life, much like life, improv is there's no ceiling to it. You can bring it to everything. Stand-up comedy we're doing, and that to me that's one of the most inspiring things is knowing, cool, we have this opportunity to keep pushing, keep keep stretching.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, sky's the limit. And I can tell, I mean, that's why I always stay in classes too, because I can tell when I'm getting a little stagnant or rusty and becoming more of a teacher and less of a performer teacher. So I think that's really, really important to keep growing ourselves and trying new things and sharing them and being open to what other people want to do and want to share as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that forward momentum, definitely a huge fan of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep scaring yourself.
Yeah.
Like and I think one of the things that's so valuable and what makes improv for life is that risk-taking habit that you create. When you first start taking improv, that moment you get on stage is always the most terrifying and exhilarating moment at the same time. And you go up there and it's scary, and then you sit down and you're like, when can I do that again?
Yeah.
And you start to apply that to your own life and say, I'm scared to do this thing. Well, I did improv. That was scary. Let me take this risk and, see if I fail. And most of the times you don't. You never really fail. You just learn from it and you go big and you take chances. So I think now, 10 years in, there's more of a sense of like, let's try this thing. And you know what? If we look stupid, if it doesn't work, who cares?
Yeah.
At least that's how I feel compared to how I felt 10 years ago when I felt more like I want to look like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be embarrassed. I'm all for risking embarrassment now. And I think that's why one of the main reasons is why I encourage everybody to try improv, because it does build your confidence so much and it encourages you to take new risks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that sort of leads us to wrapping up here. I think my last question is, and you've touched on this a little bit already, but is what are your hopes and goals for the community and company of Held Together, moving forward?
Well, first, there's the immediate short term, which is for everybody to continue to support each other and get through this healthy and smartly, and to hold on to hope. It's hard to look at the future past this sometimes, but talking to you has really helped me do that. So definitely want to get back to doing things live, but having the forward momentum of taking what we've learned these last few months and keeping that as part of our program. Mentioned mental health. I want to find ways to incorporate that. Held Together can incorporate that into more programs for all kinds of groups, all kinds of ages. I mean, it's been shown to help Alzheimer's patients. It's been shown to help autistic kids. I think that there's just endless possibility to really explore that mission for life. I also think, part of what's you were asking when it kind of became a company, one thing I left out was the corporate work, the work with companies, because it helps collaboration in businesses so much. And that's really when that started to happen, when I started getting inquiries about that, I think that's when it became a company, because I always say I love teaching, but the corporate pays my teaching habit. Because sometimes companies have more to spend on these things like that. And as those things have become less common during the pandemic, I think there's an opportunity to use the virtual platform to really help people develop those skills as well. So I'd like to see expansion with that, and continue to build the school and maybe find more space and more opportunities to have multiple things going on at once. So
so we can just have a place maybe for the community to go every night of the week if they want to.
Yeah.
You know, have an option to take a class or see a show. I think Long Beach is such a special place. There's nothing like it. And there's so much incredible talent. I think it deserves to be a hub of comedy where people know there's something going on every night of the week. So it sounds far away right now as we're quarantined, but you know, make the impossible possible, right?
Yeah. Keep on yes-anding.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for helping me solidify my thoughts on that.
Thank you for sharing. I feel like I've learned so much more about this company that I've been a part of for so long. So thank you for sharing this.
Well, thank you for asking. Thanks for wanting to know.